everyone, and welcome to the College Prep Radio broadcast. My name is Ashley Hill, and I'm your host. I'm a college success coach, and I'm so passionate about helping our families and our college-bound students prepare for college successfully. And again, I want to welcome you to College Prep Radio. Now, if you would like to call in, you can call in at 347-857-4638. Again, that's 347-857-4638. And I'm so excited today. We have a very special guest. It's Angela Schaefers, and we're talking about her new book. And also we're talking about the importance of literacy and what does that mean for you parents and your kids as well. So I want to jump right in and read Ms. Schaefers' bio. Okay. Angela Schaefers is an inspirational speaker, freelance writer, and producer and host of Your Story Matters show. Angela interviews people around the globe to share their inspiring stories of overcoming challenges and living purposefully. She writes various articles on professional networking, inspiration, and why our stories matter. She authored her memoir, Grief to Grace. She has recently published her book, Your Story Matters, You Matter, A Guide to Healing, Learning from, and Sharing Your Story. She's working on her next two books, Cancer Doesn't Come Wrapped, and A Pretty Ribbon, and More Grace. Angela speaks and shares her story of hope and faith to overcome tragedies since childhood, facing stage 4 cancer, and more to discovering her own life purpose. She is a keynote for organizations and effectively shares the message within their story. Angela positively impacts the world one story at a time. Angela has spoken to nonprofit organizations, community service-oriented groups, and government entities as their keynote speaker. She's also spoken to support groups and private sector corporations. Her previous speaking topics include the effects and dynamics of the special needs community in the home and the community, including service providers and families. She's also spoken about the power of effective communication and addressing conflict, and the benefits of positive thinking and actions. She's also spoken on the need to understand your values and beliefs in order to plan and fulfill your career goals. Also, the stages of grief, including life after the death of a loved one. Also, she's talked about the importance of overcoming shame and guilt, including learning to value your story, your experiences, and lastly, why your story matters and how sharing it can encourage and inspire others. Angela holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Organizational Management and a Master of Arts degree in Counseling. She has previously counseled families, couples, children, and individuals. She has provided career coaching as well. She has trained and worked as a chaplain. Angela has 3 children and is a Mimi, or grandmother, to 1. She enjoys outdoor activities such as biking, hiking, kayaking, and the beach, loves tea time, and savors a break to the spa. Welcome, Angela.
Ashley, thank you. I'm so excited to talk with you today and share about my book and my story with your listeners.
And I'm so excited to have you. So let's jump right in. Give us a synopsis of what your book is all about, and tell us the title, too.
The book, Your Story Matters, You Matter, A Guide to Healing, Learning from, and Sharing Your Story, is actually a platform and a starting point for anyone who wants to dwell into their story and look at the meaning in it, the purpose in it, perhaps heal from some of the things that they've been through. I include in there open-ended questions so that people can really start thinking about those things that impacted them, that helped build their character, and perhaps even help shape their life purpose. I also share some of my story and how and why I went about sharing it, and I talk about the importance of sharing our stories with others to encourage and inspire one another.
Excellent, and now I love your title. Can you tell us, how did you come up with that title?
Well, actually, my show is called Your Story Matters, and I realized the importance of your story matters and you mattering based on your story when I discovered that my own story was of value and importance to others. And so that's where I came up with the title, the first part of the title. And the second part was really to help people to understand that the book is a tool for them to use to go further in their process of self-discovery and learning, and again, healing if that's a necessary part of where they're at. So I wanted to really be able to engage people in the understanding of it's not just about sitting down and writing your story. It's about thinking about the things that happen. It's about learning from it. And then it's discovering the power in how you can help others, including your own self, by sharing it.
And I agree with you. I think it's so important we have to realize our purpose, and oftentimes that does come through learning from our past experiences. Now, take us kind of through the writing process. How long did it take? Did you write it straight through? How exactly was your writing process?
The book took about a year to write. I didn't write it straight through. There were a lot of pauses. There were many times that I looked at it and thought, is this enough? Is it too much? Is anyone going to really get the concept behind what I'm trying to do, those types of things. So I did go back and forth on it a few times. I had friends and colleagues who helped encourage me and push me along the way and helped with some of the editing of it. So it took time, but I feel like everything that we do is really all in perfect timing. So in the end, it was just right how it came out when I published it, and I've been very happy so far with the feedback that I've received about it. I think that it's just a part of me that I wanted to share as far as sharing my own story and how I discovered my purpose of sharing mine and other stories. And so it wasn't hard in that respect because it was telling my story again in another book format.
Right. And now for our parents and others who are listening, they may be thinking, well, how do you go about finding your purpose? So I want to ask you, how does one go about finding their life's purpose or discovering it?
I think a lot of it's based on looking back at your story. If you don't necessarily have to write a book, but I do encourage people to journal and to write, because sometimes that really shows us a lot more than what we just think about randomly, or we start to remember things that we didn't realize had happened to us or that we had learned from our story and our experiences. I think that just really being open and honest with yourself about where you've been and, you know, how you've experienced life, you start to discover that's how you became who you are. Those are where your attitudes and your beliefs come from. And the power in that is that if you carry some attitudes and beliefs that aren't necessarily healthy or good for you, and perhaps you've had one life that hasn't really worked for you and you haven't gone to, you know, fulfill your dreams and live the life that you want or have relationships that you want, you start to learn why. You know, what happened in the past? What were the messages that you learned? How did your story impact you?
Exactly, I agree. And now you mentioned about talking about sharing your own story and about your life's purpose. When did you discover your life's purpose? Did you know, like, from childhood? Did you discover it later on in adulthood? When did you discover yours?
It was definitely later, and that was, again, part of my process of writing the book and sharing my story. When I first wrote my first book, Grief to Grace, I was actually diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and told that I didn't have long to live. That was 10 years ago, and thankfully God had another plan for me that included living.
Did.
Yes, which is awesome and a total blessing. But at that point, I wrote my story for my children, and so I wanted my children, who were much younger at the time, to understand where I had been and what I'd gone through and how I became who I was based on my story. Well, when I ended up sharing the story publicly, which was not my intention, that's when I realized how powerful sharing our stories are, because other people were encouraged and inspired by my story, were grateful that I was open and honest about some of the things that I've been through. And that really helped me to open up my eyes and see that everything I had been through was for a purpose, and that led into me realizing that my purpose is to share my story and to share other people's story. And that's how everything evolved with Your Story Matters show, with my speaking, with writing, and those types of things. So it wasn't one particular moment. It was really a buildup of a lot of moments, and then learning from all the things I had been through, and really understanding that God has a plan and a purpose for each of us. And I figured out what mine was, and it was really because of my story. That showed me everything that I needed to know.
Right, and I just think it's so amazing. And first of all, I want to say I thank God that you are here, 10 years later. That's awesome within itself.
Thank you.
And then, yes. So glad because your first book is definitely needed. Now you have your second one, and as we're going to get into a little bit later, you have 2 more on the way. So I definitely it's we can see that this is definitely part of your purpose, and I'm so glad that that you're in your lane, so to speak. Now, for those who are afraid, someone may be listening and they're hearing about you sharing your story, particularly, with stage 4 cancer. What do you say to those people who are afraid to share their story?
Well, that's part of why I wrote the book, because I get a lot of similar questions from people all the time. How do I share my story? How do I tell people things that happen and it might hurt other people's feelings or it might shame my family or whatever? How do I, say the truth and not talk about people being bad, things like that. So I share in my book that, your story is your story. You need to own it. But the two keys that I really emphasize is not to blame others and not to judge others, because that's not really our place. Others may have had an effect on us and they were part of our lives and maybe hurt us in some way, but that doesn't mean that that's what our story is about. Our story is about what we learned from our experience, how we got through that. And that's a lot of the people that I interview on my show are people who have overcome those challenges and obstacles. And again, it's really not about whatever the challenge is. Perhaps it was illness that they had or an accident or injury, whatever it is, poverty. We can't go back and blame a situation, blame God, blame a person. That's just not relevant. What's relevant is to learn from that and move on and do something with what you learn. And so I think when people start to realize that they don't need to blame and point fingers and judge other people, they can just tell their story as it is and tell how they felt and what they learned. That's really empowering.
I agree with you. I think it's so empowering to, and this month I'm just thinking it's breast cancer awareness month, it's domestic violence awareness month, and I know that we tend to, wait till months like this, to speak up, but I just think it's so important that every day, like you said, we don't have to write a book, but we could share with a friend or, write a letter to someone about it or even to ourselves if we need to.
One thing that's so amazing about social media is that there's tons of people that are sharing positive messages and encouraging and inspiring messages of hope all over the place. And again, it's perspective. Do you choose to find the negative things that everybody's arguing about and debating about politics right now, or do you choose to find all the inspiring and encouraging messages? And that's something that I try and do myself in my own business and my personal life, is to encourage people for the good, because there is a lot of negativity and not so great stuff. But again, you can look for the good in others, and you can certainly share good from your own heart and from your own story anytime. You just never know when you could run into someone that needs to hear some little thing that you've learned, and that will help them to feel hopeful.
Exactly, and for those who are listening, and we're going to get into where you can find Angela online in just a moment, but I just want to say, from seeing your post on Facebook, at so many mornings, I'm looking myself, and I'll see one of Angela's encouraging posts on Facebook, and I'm telling you, it just changes my mindset, and I'm ready for the day. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I'm glad to know that.
Yes, it's funny how, like you just mentioned, and it's happened to me, you can read one post or one tweet, and your perspective changes, and that changes your whole day. So,
absolutely.
So appreciative of that. Now, as I mentioned, yes.
I was just going to say, and that's the thing where I think people don't realize how much they matter. That's the other part of Your Story Matters, You Matter. We have so much power to encourage and inspire one another, and I don't think we realize it, and I don't think we exercise that power.
I agree with you. I think we don't. And I wanted to ask, I read in your bio your background in counseling, and you've actually provided those services for families and couples and children and individuals. How much does that influence this book?
That is definitely a part of my writing style. I write more of in a therapeutic way, I guess. It's a good way to explain it. I don't make it too technical, of course, but because I've not only learned, experienced, and worked with others in the healing process psychologically and emotionally and mentally, I have tried to express that in the book and in all the things that I do when I speak, when I write articles on social media, that type of thing, because that is an important piece of all of this, our story, where we're at, where we're going, our dreams coming true. I feel like we need to have understanding and emotional healing, mental healing sometimes. And we need to have a mindset, like you mentioned earlier, that's healthy. And so sometimes people don't even think about that. You just go through life and you don't really question what's happening, where you're at, where you've been, or where you want to go. And then sometimes you wake up one day and wonder, what happened to my life? How did I get here?
Yeah.
And so try and encourage people to not let that happen, to really look at things as you're going along the process and to think about what's happening right now. How do you feel? What do you need? What do you want? That's very powerful when you live life that way versus just kind of going through the stages.
I agree, and, I was just listening to you talk. It's like you mentioned, the power of choice. The fact that you don't have to sit back and let someone else run the course of your life by making decisions or manipulating or controlling you, but you can actually take that power back and make your choices. And as you mentioned, as we were just talking about, a healthier mentality, and that eventually that's going to turn into, better, choices in terms of behavior-wise and what you say and the people you engage in with.
Absolutely.
Now,
yes, I tell people all the time is that, we are limited in a lot of ways about certain things in our lives. I can't take away cancer. I can't change certain relationships that I wanted to last that ended. I can't always change, where I'm at in this moment with my career or my finances or whatever it is. But we always, always have the power and the choice and the control over our attitude and how we react and respond to life.
Yes, that is the key. As you mentioned a moment ago, it's not so much the problem, but it's how we're responding to the problem that's important.
Exactly.
Yes, and so as I've been telling everyone this month, this is actually, in addition to Breast Cancer Awareness Month and Domestic Violence Awareness Month, this is also National Book Month, which I love because I think, I'm going to get your opinion on this, but I definitely think we need to promote literacy more, and not just among teens and kids, but I think adults as well, because, I believe in, and you as a mom, I'm sure would agree, that parents are really the first role models. So what are your thoughts on how literate our society is today in terms of reading, actually taking out time to read books?
I think your point brought up is so valid and something that more people should be talking about. I think, unfortunately, that with our communities and our families somewhat fractured, they're not really like they used to be. We don't have the same things going on at home that we used to. We're out and about more often. We're certainly on the Internet and the web so much, and it really has changed, in my opinion, people's willingness to read, even to play games at home, to talk, to do things that we used to do, probably like how you grew up and I grew up. I mean, we played games, we talked, we didn't watch TV that much because there wasn't really anything great on. We certainly weren't on computers. So I think it's really, really important for people, especially parents, to, instill that desire and that need to read in their family units with their kids. I still take my kids, even though they're older now, to the library. We read like crazy. We have times where there's no TV or computers on, and we just read together. And I think that's so important to continually remind your children, your family, your friends, whoever, that reading is essential. I mean, you can learn so much, and it's so powerful when you can pick up a book and learn and grow from it and have something to share with someone else, or just feel, kind of relaxed and out of the mode of busyness and have that downtime that's actually just about learning.
Right, and, I agree with everything you said, and you definitely touched on something, just the last few words you said. It's really the root behind it, because a lot of people say, I don't have time to read, but the real root is the busyness. So I think as people deal with that,
Yeah, I agree, and I think even for my own self, I found at a certain point doing my business as an entrepreneur, I was working 24/7 basically, and I thought, I have to not only have time to take care of myself physically, but I need to take care of myself emotionally and spiritually. And for me, that is about reading. I love to pick up a good book, and, I'm not really a fiction reader, but I will read fiction just to zone out and relax, great beach reads, things like that. And I think it's part of balancing our lives. And I think that's something that all of us need to do, whatever age we are. I've even tried to help, people that I've counseled with family issues to understand that kids need to be taught to balance their life. They need to be taught to have the times where they can relax, have quiet time, read, play games, just be home, not be on social media or the internet, not be going somewhere every second. Those are the things that seem out of alignment for a lot of us because we just kind of go with what's happening. We get so caught up in all these things on our to-do list.
Absolutely, and you definitely touched on it. Parents have to really kind of step up and be the role models there and promote it in the homes. Now, for those parents who are listening, let's say, they're listening to you and, their kids either their children have expressed their dislike for reading or they just have a hard time promoting their kids to read. What's your advice for those parents?
Well, I know there are a lot of people who say that their kids don't like to read. Sometimes the parents don't like to read. But I think that if you still put them around books, take them to the library, give them books as gifts, get them interested in some sort of subject. I know for my son, for example, in the beginning he was interested in cars, and so all the books were about cars. Of course, they started out as picture books. So think about, what if something's not interesting, it is hard to get kids to read. But usually even someone who's not a big reader will read something if it's about a topic that they like or that they're interested in. And there's so many books there. I mean, there's every topic in the universe, and there's plenty of books in the library. There's plenty of books at bookstores. I, encourage people to exchange books with each other and to share stuff if they read something cool or whatever. And I just think it's those little things that you have to keep doing, even though your child may not want to read or express interest in it. And the other part is really engaging them. If your kid reads, ask them later what happened in the book, what was good about it. And if they say it was boring or can't read this, ask them why. And find ways to talk about it so that you can overcome those barriers that are telling them they don't like to read or they don't want to, or they can't read or they're not going to read.
Absolutely, and I just want to reiterate on that last point about the parental engagement. When parents are truly plugged in, they'll notice, they can tell the difference between if their kid is just bored or perhaps there may be a learning disability or maybe they're dyslexic or something like that, but you'd only know if you were plugged in. So that's why it's so important.
You really be aware and be connected to your kids. That's something that I find myself repeating again and again. I understand that everybody's busy, that life's happening. Some of us are working, more than one job. Some people are going through illness and relationship issues, and that's all part of life, unfortunately. But we also have to remember that our priority, hopefully, is our family and our kids are growing up so fast. I really, encourage people to find that time, whether it's 10 or 15 minutes a day or some time on the weekend, to just be with them and find out where they're at and what's going on and encourage them in their own learning process.
Exactly, and along with that, I want to encourage those who are listening now, parents or grandparents, relatives who have kids in your life, to take Angela's book and use it as a resource, if the situation is applicable. And really, Angela, that's my next question: is how can parents use your book as a resource, to engage with their kids?
Well, I think there's a couple ways. One, parents can definitely use it for themselves and go through the book and answer some of the open-ended questions about their story and hopefully learn more about themselves and how to be more purposeful in their life, and then realize the importance of sharing some of their stories, especially with their kids. But you can also get the book and use it with your child. I would say probably anyone from like 12 on would be able to answer the questions and understand what's being said in the book. I do workshops with the book, so I know that it is something that you could use with someone and help them go through the process of going through the reading and answering the questions and then having dialogue about what that means to think about our story, to learn from it, to heal from it. And I really believe that that's part of the power in rebuilding our families and communities is, again, talking about things that we've experienced that maybe we're afraid to share, we're ashamed to share, but we need to talk about them. And sometimes when we're able to understand each other better, we're able to have much better relationships. And that's not just in the family, but that's within the community.
I agree. And what I love what you mentioned first, is that the parents can start with themselves, because many times, and I'm sure you would agree, sometimes parents can have issues, and if they're not resolved, sometimes they can project it onto their kids. You know, if they have a really critical nature or judgmental, it can show up in their kids.
That's right. And you don't realize it sometimes because, again, you don't, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of us don't go back and look at our story. We don't really think about or go through the process of why do we have this attitude about something, or why does this particular thing bother us so much. And all that feeds into how you're presenting yourself, your attitude, how your relationships are going or not going. And so there's a lot of learning in that. And I think as a parent, we owe it to ourselves and our children to be our best. And so that means having a look at the things that we've done or gone through or experienced, and how did that shape us, and what can we learn from that, and then share that learning with our own family, with our own community.
Absolutely, and wow, I cannot believe time is just flying here. I want to get into next is how can we get your book, and also you mentioned your workshops and your other services. Where can we access all of your information with your services, and where can we buy your book?
Well, everything about me and prior shows can be found at my website, www.yourstorymatters.net. The book can also be found on Amazon.com. Just type in Your Story Matters, You Matter. And on my website also there are links to my bio and my speaking information and workshop information. I also give discounts out for people who want to use the book with their small group or with their book club. If you buy 6 or more books, you get $5 off each book. You just have to order them through me via my website and pay for shipping, of course.
Wow, that's great. Okay. Now, before we wrap up here, I'm really excited about your upcoming book projects. Have you started them yet?
I have not started the workshops. They're all scheduled to start within the next month, and one of them will be 6 to 10 people, and the other ones will be up to 20 people at a time. So I'm excited about them, too. I think it's going to be a great way to open communication with other people and to get them to start talking and thinking about their story. And, again, I really hope the book is one that will just create a ripple effect of people really understanding the power in their story and how encouraging and inspiring they can be to each other.
Absolutely. And so now your next 2 titles, Cancer Doesn't Come Wrapped in a Pretty Ribbon and More Grace, when can we expect those to be published?
I'm hoping by the end of this year I'll have out Cancer Doesn't Come Wrapped in a Pretty Ribbon, and that's my own account of my living with and dealing with cancer and all the things that have gone on in the past 10 years related to that. And More Grace will be out sometime at the end of next year, and that's actually my second memoir, since the first memoir, Grief to Grace, went up to a certain point in my life, and I really want to go further and let everyone know what's happened since then and share some of the things that I've discovered on my journey along these last 10 years.
Awesome, awesome. And, you know, those who are listening, I definitely encourage you to go out, get Angela's book, visit her website, get a hold of the workshop information. Stay tuned for her upcoming releases coming up. And, Angela, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us about your new title.
Thank you, Ashley. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. I'm so glad that we're connected with one another, and I'm grateful for all that you're doing.
Thank you so much. And guys, that wraps up for today's show, and stay tuned for next week. Thank you, and have a good night.